On the 4th of October, the Germans abandon the mighty Hindenburg Line. The British Army is now into open country for the first time. On the 9th of October, the British take Cambrai. On the 14th of October, the French and the Americans resume their attacks in the Meuse-Argonne region, while the British Army attack again in Flanders. On the 17th of October, the British win a major victory on the River Selle and capture the old 1914 battlefield of Le Cateau. Throughout October, the British advance 20 miles. A steady, unspectacular, but unstoppable tide, but they're still suffering terrible losses, suffering 120,000 casualties. On the 1st of November, the American army finally breaks through and advances towards Sedan, cutting the Lille-Metz railway line. On the 2nd of November, the British army take Valenciennes. On the 3rd of November, the Germans' great ally, Austro-Hungary, surrenders. Germany is now alone. On the 4th of November, there's the last major battle, the Battle of the Sambre. It's a major British victory, but includes the death of the poet, Lieutenant Wilfred Owen. The German army reports that they can no longer hold to their own government and ask their government for an armistice. The war is over. The lack of cavalry had undoubtedly lengthened the war during the pursuit. The BEF had 60 infantry divisions, but the equivalent of only 2 cavalry divisions. On the 1st of September, Haig had begged for trucks, motorcycles and bikes to help with the pursuit of the German army, knowing that you had to capture as many of these fleeing German units as possible before they could dig back in. The British army had coped well with the change to a battle of manoeuvre, where heavy artillery could not keep up with the pace of the advance. Tanks towards the end of the war became rarely used. They often broke down and were too slow to keep up with the advance. At the walled city of Le Quincy, New Zealander troops had actually used medieval-style scaling ladders to try and storm the walls of the city. The American army suffered a high butcher's bill, suffering 250,000 casualties, and by the end of November 1918 was exhausted, unable to continue fighting. But it was important in the actions, for it added to the numbers of the Allied army, for all their inexperience. By October, the Allied forces were some 37% larger than that of the Germans. The American army had captured some 43,000 Germans and 1,421 guns, which is impressive, but the Americans' main addition to victory had been a psychological one, a psychological blow to the Germans. But 1918 was, more than anything, a British victory. From the 18th of July to the 11th of November, the Belgian, American and French armies, all combined, had captured 196,700 Germans and 3,775 guns. The British army, on its own, despite the fact that it was only the 3rd largest army by the end of the war on the Western Front, they alone had captured 188,700 Germans and 2,840 guns. And so the British army do about half the damage that these 4 armies combined inflict upon the German army. On the 9th of November, the Kaiser abdicates, and on the 11th of November, an armistice is signed. It was the greatest military victory in our history. In 1916, we had, with the destruction of our small elite army of 1914, in 1916 we had a large army of badly trained but highly enthusiastic volunteers. They had been told to fight against the most professional army in the world. The German army had been trained for 2 years before the First World War for this kind of conflict. They were well equipped, they were well led, and they were phenomenally well dug in. Our army had not had time to learn its trade before being sent into battle. They had been forced to learn upon the battlefield. And yet these amateurs had learnt to overcome the professionals at their own game. Mistakes had been made. Losses had been high. But the men who came back were rightly proud of what they had achieved in the Western Front. They did not consider themselves to be mindless victims. They considered themselves to be heroes who had overcome the most formidable army in Europe and had saved Europe by their example. And they deserve to be remembered by us as the great men that they truly were. Thank you.